Oh, yeah, DGen Nation family. You know what time it is. DGen Nation pod coming at you live, powered by the TFA, the Fantasy Authority. What is up? We are breaking down the week 17 main slate here. I can't believe, fellas, that it's week 17, but we are pretty much on the precipice of the regular season end for the 2024 season. And we appreciate the DGen Nation family rocking along with us all season long. I'm Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W, joined by my two usual suspects, Mr. Matty D, back from the dead. He comes back to give his takes, the 2v2 king, DFS himself. Matty DFS is where you can find him on Twitter. And then the Godfather, Kev Steele, he is back as well. He had no other obligations, just the obligation to be here to give the hot takes to the people, the family. You know what it is. It's Fantasy Wrath 13 on Twitter. Next is where you can find him. Fellas, how are we doing today? We got a short slate. Not sure how the pod will be, but at least a short slate to break down here for the week 17 main slate with all the football that's been happening pretty much all throughout the week. How you guys doing?
Yeah, it's good. It's probably the last true slate we have, right? Before the week 18 chaos we get next week. And who knows if we'll even what that slate's going to look like and if we'll even have fun on that one. But so this is probably the last full slate. I guess it'll depend on, what teams are clinched heading into week 18 and who isn't and who's getting benched and who's playing their starters. I guess at least the one thing, right, is the Lions will play the Vikings for all the marbles next week, regardless of what happens this week. So
That's right.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. Hopefully that'll probably, my guess is that'll be flexed to the last game of the day though, and be the Sunday night game, but we shall see. But yeah, this should be an interesting slate.
Kev, how you feeling?
Should be able to get Seahawks Rams too. I think that game should be in play as well for the division.
So yeah, that'll be a fun
one. But yeah, it's kind of a weird one. Just with being 8 games, that's not something we typically see on this slate, and it is starved for certain plays. Like I think honestly, when you look at like running back plays, it's like probably some of the worst we've seen in a while, just because all the games that aren't on this slate. But there are still some really healthy game totals, though, still. So that's a positive. We still get the Vikings and Packers with the 48.5 point total. We got the Panthers game, the 48 point total as well. So at least we still have those games still on the slate. Because you have to scroll down to get down to the next closest one, I think, is the Bills and Jets game, which is 46, to get down to the next one. And then you have to keep going really far down to get down into the 40s for the next one. So, I feel like trying to make a stand in certain places in terms of ownership. I don't think you have to get too wild when it comes to it, though, when it comes to ownership and everything else with the slate. But, because I feel like everyone's going to be trying to jam in probably Saquon and Bucky Irving. I think those two are the ones that I think everybody's going to try to go after.
Are we going to get Flacco this week?
I think it's a possibility against the Giants for sure. Shane Steichen didn't rule him out, but Richardson didn't really practice this week at all. Yeah,
he didn't practice at all. I don't know if it's some sort of like trying to mess with him, because he didn't practice at all. Joe Flacco took all the first team reps this entire week. So
yeah, so it could be Flag Daddy. It could be Flag Daddy coming at you on Sunday, which could definitely change up some things for sure, for me at least, to be able to jam in the studs at running back, as Kev is alluding to. Because it is a fun slate, and I see the questions coming in from people. Shout out to everybody who's always rocking with us as we go live on a Friday night. This is a great way to be spending your Friday evenings, build some lineups. We do have some Saturday football as well too, so don't forget to get your lineups in, get your lineups set. If you have some dummy lineups, don't forget about those as the slate kicks off at noon on Saturday tomorrow, which leads us to an 8-game Sunday slate, a really short one, fellas, that we're building around. But like Kev said, when we're looking at the teams who stand out as we get to talk about quarterback here, there's only 2 teams that are implied to score 26 or more points, that being the Buffalo Bills, as always, and what they've been doing, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I expect to be extremely popular on this slate, starting with Baker, who comes in at 6,900, who is the second highest priced quarterback on the slate, because we're not going to have Jalen Hurts. He's out in concussion protocol, so it's between him and Josh Allen as your 2 pay up options there, the 2 highest applied in team totals. I mean, Baker obviously looks great on paper going against this Carolina team. A lot of incentives for him and his contract that he's playing for. I think he's got a couple mil on the table. Mike Evans has got a couple bucks on the table as well to be hitting some of his thresholds. So, I expect them to come out, and they're also, vying for playoffs. So that game definitely looks interesting to me. And on the other side, we have a Bryce Young guy, or a quarterback who's priced at 5,600, who's got some cheap stacking pieces as well. So that game environment really sticks out to me to be able to attack this week. Not sure if I'm going to go the Baker route or the Bryce Young route, but I like both. Maddie, I'm going to welcome you in here and just not waste any time. Let's just talk to the people and see where you're at and where your head's at as you start to build around the slate.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of offenses that stand out. First off, have we had a bigger gap between the top price QB and this number 2 price QB on a slate before? I mean, Josh Allen's 8,500, and then number 2 is Baker at 69. I mean, that is just such a massive gap.
Right.
But I don't know that I can pay the 8,500 for Allen. I was, we were on him, 3 or 4 weeks ago, right, when he was still in the 7s. And, then, of course, with the moment we hop off, he scores. Is when he scores 50.
He goes, We were on him before the 54
for like 3 straight weeks. We played him every week, and we were like, we can't play him at 8K. And when you have these value QBs, and then he goes for 50. But it's. I personally love the Green Bay Minnesota game. I mean, Green Bay is going to have to throw the ball against Minnesota. We saw earlier this year, Jaden Reed, absolutely nuked Minnesota, and so did Jordan Love. I mean, Love threw for 389 and 4. Anytime Green Bay gets,
he had to, right, because of that game script. I mean, 28-0 lead.
It very well could happen again. I mean, they're in Minnesota; they're not at Green Bay, so Minnesota should be able to score the ball. But anytime they get away from just being able to hand the ball off to Jacobs, which they won't be able to do that here because Minnesota is just a stone wall against running backs. It puts Jordan Love in that pass offense in play, and the pass catchers are kind of, spread out in terms of, we don't really ever have confidence as to who's going to score, but Christian Watson's been banged up. So, there's a chance he may not play. If he were to, somehow sit, that target tree gets a lot smaller for J Love. So I like Love a lot personally, and he's only 6,200. So it's him and Darnold, that game, just game stacking that game. I like that game a lot. And then obviously Baker's another big one. Him and Bryce Young. So yeah, I think my QB is going to come from one of those 2 games personally.
No, I like that call out. I mean, that's going to be a fun game. We know a lot's riding on that game, and honestly, when we're looking at the state of the slate, it is only 8 games, but all the outdoor games look like they have some weather attachment tied to them, whether it be rain or probably some winds or what have you. So this game being inside, I think indoors will garner some interest in that way. And we just saw Justin Jefferson put up near 40 burger against Seattle. We know what Addison's capable of. Hawkinson's been back in the mix, so we know the pieces. And Maddie, I've been saying it all year, like the Packers, it's great when you can narrow their paths of success and who you need to target when you don't have to go through a whole bunch of dudes. So love that you called out the Watson injury.
And they're cheap too. Like we always talk about, right? Like what cheap passing stack can I play that allows me to fit in, like the stud running backs around it? And that's, for me, that's Green Bay this week. I mean, J Love is 6,200, which is too cheap for this matchup. Then you've got Jaden Reed, who's under 6K. He's 5'9". Dobbs is 5'1". Wicks is 3'9" if Watson sits. And then at tight end, Kraft is 3'9" as well. So like it's such a cheap stack that you can play, Love with 2 or 3 of those guys, and you can still fit in Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, the big running backs up top, Bucky Irving, those kinds of guys.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing you need to, say when you're talking about Jordan Love is like, look at the quarterbacks that the Vikings have been getting, sliced and diced by in the passing game. I mean, Caleb Williams put up 300 yards against them. Geno Smith put up 300 yards against them, and these 2 guys couldn't put up, anything on Monday Night Football. A little bit, or Thursday Night Football, excuse me, just yesterday. So I mean, Kirk Cousins had a decent game against this defense. Like they allow for so much pass passing success because, like you said, it's tough to run on this team in abundance. So like the Love call out, that's going to be an interesting one to monitor. I actually like the Sam Darnold side again, just because of those explosive pieces that they have. But either one of those should make for an interesting game stack. Let's bring in Kev. Kev, who you building around this week, and what's standing off in the page for you as we talk about this short Sunday slate?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you guys already talked about. I mean, I think, Jordan Love, I think, makes for a really good play. The only concern you guess would have is like the Packers are really playing for nothing. I don't think any of their situation really can change with a win or a loss. I think they're kind of locked into where they're at for the most part. So you do get somewhat concerned, like, is there the motivation there to come out? I mean, the Vikings don't have a ton to play for either, with the game, everything being decided next week. So I guess there's some concern with some letdown with that game, but it does set up really nicely. I mean, the Bucks, but the thing with on the Bucks side, the Bucks game is everybody's wanting to play Baker, but nobody's really wanting to play Bryce Young. At least what I'm seeing right now in terms of ownership. I mean, he's projected at 6% ownership right now. What I'm seeing, and like this is one of the games that he crushed on. And if you're wanting to pay for a cheaper quarterback, it's $5,600. Like, great matchup against the Bucks defense. It makes it a pretty easy stack for the most part. If you want to, going with Thielen the Bucks are a team that really likes to funnel things to the slot. That sets up really well for Adam Thielen in this game. We saw him in his return to the field in that game a few weeks ago. We're also starting to see Bryce Young run the ball more than what he typically does. He has three rushing touchdowns in his last 4 games. So not wanting to play Baker Bryce Young doesn't make a lot of sense to me, considering the price, considering we want to try to pay up for some of these running backs because it's kind of a thin running back slate. And if you're really wanting to do so, I mean, he's one of the cheaper quarterbacks on this entire slate.
Yeah, I really do like Bryce Young. I think that it makes a ton of sense. You highlighted all the things that stand out with Baker being popular, and because of the situation that's going on with the Bucks here, Sterling Shepard's going to be out, Kate Otten being out. Like, you could just really take, Mike Evans and Bucky. You could take one of those two. It makes the, bringbacks a lot easier than potentially on the other side if this game were to pop off. And you've been talking about it all season, Kev, about the Tampa Bay, funnel defense that's been had. So I do like Bryce. I think it, with the cheaping stacking partners, make it a lot of fun. Is there any, I think when we're talking about the Buffalo and Jets game, that I can't play Rodgers. It becomes a little bit tough. He's 5,700. But that game does have some interesting merit just because of like the offenses, I guess, on either side, because we know that Buffalo, like, when they're implied to score close to 30, like, this team can get there. I know James Cook has been really hot, running hot. That's kind of taken away from a little bit of what Josh Allen can do, but it's still Josh Allen. And then you have like this concentrated, duo of Adams and Wilson. Wilson hasn't been in the mix as of late, but Adams has. Would you guys be interested in like an Allen stack that with potentially like the pass catchers on the Jet side because of the way these offenses are playing, or do you feel like it's going to be too thin? It's an 8-game slate, so like there are going to be different paths that potentially could work out. What's your thoughts on that, Maddie?
Yeah, I think if you're going to play Allen, you just game stack that game because of how the Jets are priced. Like, Garrett Wilson's only 61 and Breece Hall's only 63, and it's a three-person offense. It's just Breece, Adams, and Wilson that is the offense there. So, if the Jets are able to put up points, which, I mean, Buffalo has shown that they can give up some production on the ground. So I definitely don't mind Breece Hall at all. But, man, I don't know, 85 just with me wanting to pay up for the running backs and some of these big receivers like Jefferson or Mike Evans this week. It's just tough for me to justify playing Josh Allen.
I think if you did, I think you just play him naked.
Yeah, I there's not a Buffalo guy that I would play, but I would definitely run it back with a Jets guy.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to play it is like you take in Josh Allen, hope all the points come there. and then get these Jets guys. It's just, Adams and Wilson have both been at times, a catalyst for some really, some strong DFS scores, especially Adams, which we'll talk about at wide receiver. Anything else sticking out to the page for you guys at quarterback? I mean, Aiden O'Connell is going against the Saints team that, just pretty much got their asses handed to them by the Green Bay Packers the last time we saw them on a slate. It was an island game, but we know we know where he's going with the ball. Got a real narrow distribution of targets. The running backs do factor in because they're in an interesting spot with both of them, Madison and Abdullah being healthy, but Aiden O'Connell only being 5,100. Everybody does look to pay down, at quarterback sometimes. So I could see Mac Jones getting interest. I could see Mason Rudolph getting interest. And then Aiden O'Connell's kind of right there. You guys have talked about Aiden O'Connell both. So any love for the AOC man out there in Vegas?
Not this week.
No, I just don't think they are able to push anything. I mean, Spencer Rattler and that offense just looks lost. Now, we might get Chris Olave back. We'll have to see. He's been practicing full all week, so it's possible maybe they actually have a weapon there. Because last week that was a brutal game. Watching that Packers game. Yeah, and just really quick, date Mike for DFS purposes, Jaguars defense. We normally get the defense at the end. I don't think you need to play the Jaguars defense. I'm just going to get this really quickly just to answer the question. Their projection is like the 8th best running back or 8th best defense on the slate. There's way better plays, I think, than the Jaguars against the Titans. Anyways, sorry. Just want to answer that real quick.
Love it. Appreciate the question. But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Kev. Yeah, Chris Olave being back, I think that's interesting. I know he's got that IR designation that hasn't been activated yet officially, but the fact that he has been practicing and it is concussion. So they're not good. If he comes back, we got to imagine that he's fully healthy, and we don't have to worry about that. That definitely would help be a catalyst to this offense. One final thing before we pass it over to running backs is we do have, we got to talk about it. This Miami Dolphins team, it has just been a conundrum. Tua has actually had some pretty decent numbers since he's come back from his, concussion roles. They are still fighting for chances in playoffs. So that picture is probably going to become a little bit clearer for him or clearer for them, depending on how these Saturday games go with the Bengals being on there, Broncos, Chargers, what have you. And they're playing in Cleveland. This is a weather game. We saw it on Thanksgiving. Tua wasn't really that popular going up in Green Bay, but still ended up, putting up a decent game. He's going against this Cleveland team that is they're just dead in the water. And they keep running out this DTR guy who just can't get it done. This could be a really fun spot for Miami. Now, I know there's some, injuries with Waddle and Hill and who's going to be playing, but I mean, if Tua's out there, he's shown a propensity to be able to take this offense to some heights going against this Cleveland team and they abandoned the run really. They don't use the running backs to run the ball at all. They're just throwing stuff to them, which really helps the quarterback situation there. Any interest potentially in the Tua play that's now 5,800, who just continues to see his price decrease, the lowest price he's been at since week 12?
Not for me. He's also questionable heading into this game too.
Yeah. The whole offense is questionable, but
they've been questionable the last 4 weeks.
Right. I mean, there's still playoffs to be in the mix. I think that they'll play, but yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Maddie.
I don't think you have to. I mean, I don't think they're gonna be pushed at all. I mean, the Browns are just so bad at this point.
Yeah, with DTR, they stink.
So
if Winston was QB, it'd be a different story.
Yeah,
for sure. No, if Winston was playing, that game would be really exciting. But yeah, I mean, bad offense on the other side. We never know how that could go, but that could lead to short fields and could lead to some more scoring for them. I know there's some weather there expected in Cleveland. Not sure how bad it will be, but just something to monitor. And Tua's the one guy who's kind of off the reservation that I would, consider in my 3 max and 5 max builds. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just gonna just to kind of clarify. We kind of talk to a lot of players. So who are you guys top 3 quarterback plays on the slate?
I'll I'll go Love, Darnold, Baker.
I think for me, it's Baker, Young, and then probably Darnold.
Okay. I think for me, I think it's Bryce Young, then Jordan Love. And then it probably would be Sam Darnold, I think, following up after that.
Yeah.
Though I would say, I just don't know, like, because I think Joe Flacco becomes really interesting if Anthony Richardson's out.
That's true.
But the thing is, like, the Giants have been so bad. Like, it feels like they would just feed the rock.
It's just going to be the Jonathan Taylor game, yeah.
Yeah, and he just sees 25 touches in that game, and they don't really throw the ball that much.
I agree. I think that Green Bay, Minnesota has a chance to go nuclear, and Carolina, Tampa Bay also has a chance to go nuclear. So, you're losing out on upside by playing Flacco. Now, if both of those games were to disappoint, the 4.9 QB allows you to get a lot of the running backs. So, that would make sense if you're somebody who's super low on the Green Bay, Minnesota game for whatever reason, and Carolina, Tampa Bay, which, I mean, I guess Carolina, Tampa Bay, all the points could just be on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, because none of these other games stand out as like shootouts, right? Like Buffalo should handle the Jets easily, I would think. Tennessee, Jacksonville is a weather game, and that's two awful offenses. Vegas and New Orleans, again, also awful offenses. No Derek Carr, no Kamara for the Saints. Dallas and Philly, it's two backup quarterbacks. No CeeDee Lamb for Dallas. No Hurts for Philly. Indy and the Giants, that is probably the grossest game of the week. Miami at Cleveland's also disgusting. So it's just a really low-scoring slate across the board. And really the two games where it's like, I feel like this could be back and forth on both sides would be Carolina, Tampa Bay, and Green Bay, Minnesota.
Yeah, makes for an interesting play. Let's talk about running back. Kev kind of hit it up at the top as we were talking about the slate, because we do have such ugliness, I guess, so to speak. I mean, even at the running back position, it's one of the uglier ones that we've had in quite a while. But the quarterbacks are just going to be very straightforward, I feel like, when we look at ownership heading into the Sunday slate, for the most part. So we know where people's builds are going to go. And like when you see the spot that Saquon's in, playing with Kenny Pickett there in the backup, I know there's a lot of narratives about, is Saquon going to get for 2,000 yards and kind of what that means, and can he get to Dickerson? I don't think Dickerson potentially happens, especially with, week 18 might not mean anything for them, but, definitely could get to 2,000 yards and can do that against this Dallas team on Sunday. So I know that he'll garner interest. And then obviously Bucky Irving, being 6,700 going against Carolina, a spot that we've targeted ad nauseum all year. And so have a lot of people playing DFS with Bucky Irving kind of taking over the lead role there. Those are just the two places that people I know are going to go. I do like both of them, and I do want exposure to both of them. But I do, Jonathan Taylor feels a little bit chasey to me. I think that, with Flacco being in, Flacco being in would make me interested in the pass game a little bit more with this Giants team. I mean, the Giants have played, the defense has played a little bit better. I mean, the offense has just been so bad. But, I mean, I don't want to say contained, but it's like we've had running backs be in these smash spots against the Giants for the past couple of weeks, and not all of them have been getting there. So there is a potential for a letdown. He's coming off of that big game. I know that people will want to chase that if they can, but I do love Devon Achane still. He's 7,700. He's the catalyst for this offense. He does so much, and I think he's a great pivot off of Taylor, off of Barkley, not really playing Jacobs at the $8,100 price tag with what Maddie alluded to. So my two favorite payups this week are Barkley and Achane. Obviously, I'm going to want to get to Bucky as much as I can. And outside of those guys, like, I really don't have interest in, running backs unless there are one-off spots that could present themselves on builds. I really will be trying to build around a pay-up option, that's outside of a Tampa Bay running back, and then most likely a Tampa Bay running back when I'm not playing Baker. That's just running back has just been such a surefire way to just get guaranteed points all year, Maddie. We kind of talk about that, like the running back chalk is always the first chalk that I'm willing to eat because the guys who are in good spots are just in good spots, and I'll just try and differentiate my rosters elsewhere. I do think that, if I'm playing some Darnold, I definitely will have interest in Aaron Jones, who's been seeing an increased target share, especially in competitive games. You're looking at, 5 targets last week against Seattle, had a couple 4-target games previous to that. Like, he is involved. And Green Bay, like, this could be a matchup that he gets excited for, his former team. So I think he does make sense in some Sam Darnold builds. Jerome Ford, he'll be talked about. He's 5,900. It was interesting that he did see, some catches out of the backfield from DTR, and is an explosive runner there. It's tough to, always target running backs against this Miami team the way they've been playing on defense, but he does have a role with nobody else kind of around him there in Cleveland. And it looked like last week that they wanted to make the offense be built around him. So I do think there is some merit to have interest in him. And then Tajay Spears is the other guy who I wanted to talk about before I pass it to you, Maddie. We've talked about this ad nauseum all year, but Tony Pollard just kind of seems to pop up on the injury report, at Thursdays, Fridays, heading into the weekend. Sometimes he gets ruled in. Other times we get a surprise on Sunday. And if it's the Tajay Spears show at 5,400 against Jacksonville, I definitely will have some interest in this guy, as we've been targeting running backs against Jacksonville all year. And this guy has been, in limited work with Pollard being active in week 16, week 15, like, he's putting up over 20 DK points. So if he has this offensive backfield, like, pretty much all to himself, you got to be excited about it. Tajay Spears at 5,400. But until that comes to fruition, I don't know that I'll necessarily build for that, so to speak, but I definitely will be keeping an eye on that come the Sunday report. Maddie, what are you looking at running back this week, and where are you going?
Yeah, I think there's 5 running backs that stand out as clear better options than everybody else on the slate. And we've already, I think, mentioned most of them. Bucky Irving's an obvious one, 6,700. He's taken over what should be the lead role in that offense and gets the best rush matchup in the NFL against Carolina at home. And he already smashed them a couple weeks ago. So 6,700 for Bucky, which, I mean, the Bucs are still alive for the playoffs, and they shouldn't just be rotating running backs for the sake of rotating running backs anymore. Like, this is the home stretch, right? Like, if Bucky's out there smashing early, he should get the majority of the carries. And we saw 25 carries out of him again when they played Carolina a couple of weeks ago. So I like Bucky Irving a lot. I mentioned Breece Hall already, but Breece Hall's the third best game of the year so far this year came in week 6 against Buffalo, who they're playing in this matchup here. He had 18 carries for 113 on the ground and had 6 targets, 5 catches for 56 through the air. And that's actually his only 100-yard rush game on the entire season is against Buffalo. So Buffalo's given up production on the ground this year. You can definitely run the ball on them. 6,300 for Breece Hall. I mean, if you told me at the beginning of the season I was going to get a $6,300 Breece Hall, I would have called you a liar, considering he was mid-7s the entire season. So his big thing is just, can he fall in the end zone? And I think he's got a shot at 100 yards here. So 6,300, great play for Breece Hall. You mentioned Aaron Jones. I like that call a lot, Ryan. His big thing is volume. They fed him the rock the last time they played Green Bay. He had over 20 carries. He just hasn't had a ceiling game yet this year, but I think, some of that's been, he's scored some weeks, and other weeks he's gone over 100 yards and, hasn't scored. So he just hasn't put it all together, but 6,200 is definitely in play for Aaron Jones against Green Bay at home. So I do like that call. And then the 2 obvious ones are the guys up top. Jonathan Taylor against the Giants with possibly no Anthony Richardson means they could just turn around and feed the ball to Taylor all game. And then Saquon Barkley, same thing. No Jalen Hurts means they get the ball to the 1-yard line. It's not a tush push. So it'll be the Saquon show.
Right.
30 carries last week for Saquon. I guess the only concern I have is, how much will Pickett target him. But I mean, 30 carries is a lot. So I would expect that same, close to that same workload for him. But 8,600 is obviously a hefty price tag. So.
Yeah, he just can rip, we've seen it. He rips these big yardage gains so easily. And against a Dallas team like we know that could be coming to fruition. Kev, what say you at the running back position? Where are you looking to go for your builds this Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the obvious ones like Achan. I mean, he like as you've already mentioned. I mean, you're not going to find a running back outside of Alvin Kamara that is seeing the type of workload that he sees in the passing game. He sees almost a 20% target share in this offense, and this is actually a pretty solid matchup against Cleveland, who have allowed the fourth most rushing touchdowns, the eighth highest explosive run rate, and the fourth most missed tackles forced per attempt, and the seventh most yards before contact per attempt since week 10. So I think it just sets up really well for Achan. I'm not really worried about the Browns doing a whole lot. So I think that when you look at this, I think Achan just sets up really nicely. And I think he's actually good leverage off of some of these other higher price running backs that are around him. Jonathan Taylor, obviously, we've talked about it. Like, the only thing bad about him is he's not really involved in the passing game, but that changes a little bit with Flacco compared to Anthony Richardson. But I mean, Jonathan Taylor also plays 90% of the snaps. He handles virtually all the touches. And the Giants versus running backs since week 10 are allowing 140 rushing yards per game, 8 touchdowns, second in yards after contact per attempt, and the fourth most PPR points per game. So it's just a phenomenal matchup for Jonathan Taylor. But some of it could be a little chasey, there. But Bucky Irving, great play. Again, you guys mentioned it. Don't really need to go too much further into that. I'm not that excited to play Aaron Jones. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I chased this enough with Aaron Jones. Like, he just doesn't really get me all that excited to play him. Cam Akers mixes in as well and takes some touches. Like, I kind of like Tank Bigsby a little bit, and at $5,200 in this matchup, because in game scripts where they're not like really trailing by a lot, Bigsby can definitely be involved and see 18 touches, and so I think this game kind of sets up like that for them, and so I don't mind paying down on an 8-game slate because there's wide receivers I want to play and I want to pay up for on this slate. And so kind of getting maybe one of the high price running backs and then dropping down to somebody that's a little bit cheaper. I also think Tyrone Tracy is also a good play at 5,800. He was clear, removed from injury report today, practicing full. So that was good to see. And so I don't mind playing him either. But as far as the Titans are concerned, since week 10, they've allowed the second most rushing yards, the most rushing touchdowns, the fifth lowest stuff rate, and the 11th most yards before contact per attempt. So it sets up as a really good spot for Tank Bigsby too. And so just kind of if you're looking for a little bit of a cheap play, I think Tank Bigsby is somebody at $5,200 that makes sense. And like I mentioned, Tyrone Tracy, the Colts have allowed the 6th most PPR points to the position as well. So those are kind of the two pay down options that I kind of like as well. And I'll say too with Breece Hall to kind of echo behind that. The Bills have been horrendous against pass catching running backs more so than anything. They're allowing a 20% target share to running backs this year and over 40 receiving yards per game to running backs. So I think this sets up really well. We actually saw Breece Hall. Some of the concern with him was been the injury that he had and not really seeing as much volume. But last week, he actually played 80% of the snaps and ran 65% of the routes. That 65% route participation is elite. So I think that he could end up being a smash play at that price. I mean, $6,300. I mean, this is typically a player that we're paying $8K for, that he's $6,300. I get it that he hasn't been, kind of that guy that he was last year, especially down the stretch, but he does seem to be getting more healthy. And I can guarantee you that this is a game the Jets would love to beat the Bills, and so I think they're obviously going to have some motivation. So Breece Hall, I definitely think is in play.
Almost did it. Said was on mute and almost talked over it. But I like the Breece Hall call out, Kev. We've been talking about Breece Hall for a couple weeks now. Hopefully we could get one more game before the season wraps up. That would be a lot of fun. Just curious, as we talk about Bucky Irvin, it sounds like we all three of us are on him, and obviously the spots present itself. But what are our thoughts on Rachaad White here? Would we be apt to play him in a Baker lineup potentially if they're somehow having to play from behind against Carolina, or maybe in a Bryce Young lineup if they're having to come from behind? He does still have a pass catching role in this offense and still seems to be involved enough. So he's going to be. I don't want to call him leverage necessarily, but he could definitely be a strong pivot point off of Bucky over. And Bucky's been so good. I mean, maybe we could talk about playing both of these guys, but I just have to be able to bring him up because it's not like he doesn't have a role in this offense whatsoever at all. But Bucky's obviously is going to be the stronger one and does show so on paper.
I'm playing Bucky. I can't play Rachaad White.
I mean, he is involved in the passing game. He saw 8 targets last week against the Cowboys once they fell behind. I think he would be more of just a game theory, if you think that the Panthers can build an early lead and push them to really throw the ball. Because that's kind of what happened last week, where they fell behind pretty significantly, and they had to throw the ball. They trust Rachaad White more in pass protection and stuff like that. So when they have to throw the ball a lot, that's when you typically see a lot more Rachaad White. So I don't mind it, like, if you wanted to get there, but I mean, because he has shown some semblance of ceiling. I mean, he has games. I mean, even recently, week 14 against the Raiders, he put up 25 in that game. But that was also when Bucky was kind of dealing with some injuries, and he was a little bit more limited. But even still, I mean, before that, 11, 19, 12, 16. But, I guess the question is, do you think he could put up a score that you had to have it, on the slate? And I don't know if he does.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'd be apt to probably play him with Baker because he tends to, it seems like he'll be getting those touchdowns through the air, most likely, and with limited options, with Otten being out, Shepard being out, what have you. It's possible that he could, find his way into the end zone there. It does become, I don't know that I would want to play Rachaad White on a team, definitely not without probably Baker, and definitely I don't think I want to give up the Bucky equity as well too. So it might just be playing them both together because running back is not that great of a position this week. But yeah, just wanted to be able to bring that up because I know how popular Bucky will be, and there is a guy behind him who is getting involved.
I will say I was looking at some ownership here, and I don't know what you're seeing over on what you look at, Maddie, but I'm seeing Jonathan Taylor only with 10% ownership, which is significantly less. That puts him as the RB10.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I'll be overweight on that because Taylor, he should not be that low.
Taylor 14 and Breece Hall 16. Those are the two low ones that I'm like, yes, please.
So I'm seeing Breece Hall at 21 on fantasy points.
I see Aaron Jones is getting Aaron Jones is getting all the ownership from that Breece Hall price. Aaron Jones, I'm seeing 27.
So I'm seeing Bucky at 30, Achane at 25, Aaron Jones at 25, Breece Hall at 21, and then Saquon at 20, Chuba at 20, Rico at 15, Kendre Miller at 13%, and then Jonathan Taylor at 11.
Yeah, it's Bucky, Aaron Jones, Barkley, and Achane are the clear 4 that are popular on my end.
Yeah.
Fun running back slate, boys. Fun running back slate. We'll wait to see what these injuries look like coming in. But yeah, it'll be a fun one to build around as we get closer to the Sunday lock. Let's talk about the wide receiver position. And this is where it becomes fun. There's no official ruling on DK, but we know the official ruling has been that CeeDee Lamb will be out. So we did a fun receiving core there in Dallas, which I think, will cause some ownership because the pieces will be cheap and will allow people to get to other pieces that also, maybe there's a bring back element there with the Saquon. So, like the Kamante Turpins of the world, the Jalen Tolberts of the world, these guys I expect to, garner some interest because of their price tags. And Cooper Rush has been able to, make things happen since taking over for Dak. It hasn't obviously been an explosive offense by any means, but it's been relevant. So we'll see what happens there. But at the top, you got Justin Jefferson, you got AJ Brown, you got Mike Evans, and all these guys are obviously the studs. But I think really Mike Evans is going to stand out at 7,500, just with the situation that he's in. I know there's a lot of incentives that he's playing for. The 1K mark has been a huge thing that him and Baker have both talked about. Baker is actually probably more excited to get him to the 1K mark than Mike Evans, to be honest with you. And he's right there with 2 games left. So that's interesting. I know he's got some incentives for like 70 catches, which he's not too far behind. Thinks he needs 3 more, and then he's got some touchdown incentives as well to hit double digits. So I think Mike Evans is going to get peppered, and I think we see the ownership come in on him as such, because people don't want to miss out on that game, whether they're playing Baker or not. Mike Evans is going to be popular. AJ Brown's tough to play, obviously, with Kenny Pickett being there. And then Justin Jefferson, it is a tough matchup for him. I'm not sure what Jair's status is going to be, Jair Alexander, that is. I know, he hasn't always popped off in these matchups against Green Bay, but it is Justin Jefferson. We know what he's capable of, and he's 8,300. Like, they just don't want to price him up any further. And he put up a 40 burger last week at 82. So only getting $100 more in a game environment like this. Definitely have some interest in Jefferson with the Darnold stacks. Let's talk about the guys who stand out, on the page as I toss it to you, Maddie. Devontae Adams at 7,100. Like, this is another guy who just won't get priced up really all that much, but he has just been such a primary target for Aaron Rodgers and has been so heavily involved. And if the Bills are going to put up close to 30 points and the Jets are going to be forced to throw, like, Adams is just going to always be in play every week. I think he makes for a really sharp play on a slate like this. Granted that we can get some value pieces elsewhere. Brian Thomas Jr. has been absolutely incredible. This Tennessee defense has been tough to you trust wide receivers who go against them, but the way that even with Mac Jones taking over, like, the target share has been absolutely incredible. Like, Mac is just like, find a way to get this dude the ball because he's a game changer, and they're treating him as such. So you love to see that. He's only 6,800, still feels too cheap for what he's providing. Jordan Addison is obviously going to be in play at 6,300 in that matchup as well there. Jacoby Myers, he's getting priced up a little bit. He's finally in the 6K range. Only saw that 5 targets coming back again in that Jacksonville game, but he has had that rapport with Aiden O'Connell. And I know he always pops in some sim models too. So curious to see where things come in on Jacoby Myers. Calvin Ridley was on his way to really wrecking things last week, I thought. He had a big catch early on with the touchdown and then proceeded to only turn in a 5 for 78 yard line with that touchdown for 16.8. But if he's able to get going in this matchup, he's 5,500 only. He's going to be really enticing. I think the Colts pieces will be enticing if we get Flacco. I do like the Carolina pieces. Probably Jalen Coker, my favorite, at 4,300 if I'm going to play Bryce Young teams. And then the Green Bay Packers pieces, as we alluded to, especially with Watson being questionable if he's able to be ruled out. I think that you talked about Reed's matchup, Maddie, in that first game, and Reed's always been a huge catalyst. But Romeo Doubs has actually been going lately. Let's just cross off the New Orleans game because that's just a weird game that they blew him out. Didn't have to do much, but he really has been, it's not going to show in the box scores, but he's been trusted from Love for quite some time. Has a pretty significant red zone role as well too. And without Watson being there, I think he'll definitely get some more looks. I know, like, these other guys that we sometimes have to worry about, the Malik Heaps of the world and Bo Meltons of the world, like, they haven't really been involved. So if it's really just between like Reed and Dobbs and Wicks and Kraft, like, I'm willing to take shots on Dobbs probably more so as the one-off, just because of the significant discount that you get on him as opposed to Reed. I guess it's only $800 now. That's kind of crazy, but there's going to be a fun Packer. I know there's going to be a Packer that kind of breaks the slate. And then Maddie, of course, like Neighbors, I got to talk about him. He's 6,600. He is that offense. So Flacco being on the other side there, like, maybe Drew Lock can keep things going, but he's 66. Just got to bring him up because of his target share as well too. Maddie, what are you looking at wide receiver? Where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, you can guess it. My receivers I like the most are coming from the Green Bay Minnesota game. I mean, it's we already mentioned it when talking about the quarterbacks, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. But obviously, Wicks is a great play at 3.9. Jaden Reed's a great play at 5.9. Dobbs is totally fine at 5.1. And then on the other side of that game, I mean, if you're playing Darnold, do you have to play both Addison and Jefferson with Darnold, or can you pick one of them and play Hawkinson?
You could probably pick one. Play Hawkinson.
Because I mean, a couple weeks ago when I actually was on Darnold, I played both Addison and Jefferson with him, and that obviously paid off because all three of those guys went for 30 plus. So it's definitely possible that both receivers get there, but Addison's now priced up to 6.3 and Jefferson's back up to 8.3. So, you're definitely not getting a discount on those guys. When Addison, I think a couple weeks ago, when he had the 42 burger, he was only 5.3. So, he was a 1,000 cheaper, and it made a lot more sense.
Yeah.
To pair those two guys together. But now with them being both priced up through the roof, it kind of feels like a either or, and then you run with the tight end Hawkinson as well. So yeah, I mean, that game is obviously my top target. So I like all the receivers from there. Outside of that game, though, Mike Evans, you mentioned him and his 1,000-yard mark. I mean, Baker made a comment. He doesn't want to be the QB that doesn't get Evans the 1,000 yards. In a season, but Evans was hurt for a little bit, so that definitely would play into it. But Evans he's sitting at 818, so he needs 182 to hit the mark over the last 2 weeks. So that's an average of 91 a game. The Panthers are without Horn this week, and their defense is just bad in general. I could just see Baker just saying, you know what, let's just get as much of that 182 as we can this week, and then we'll figure out what we need in week 18. So I love the Mike Evans play. I hate to say this, but I almost prefer Evans to Jefferson this week, and then play like Addison as the salary saver, and as my exposure there from Minnesota. But if you're not playing Darnold, at least. So yeah, I love Mike Evans. He's probably my favorite pay up on the whole slate. I think we see a 30 burger out of him. And if you're not playing Evans, if you're like, you know what, I'm not buying into that. I'm not buying into the forced targets to Mike Evans this week. I think you have to have interest in Jalen McMillan at 4,600. I mean, he's been one of the most consistent guys in the NFL, over the last couple of weeks in terms of usage. I mean, 7, 6, 7 last 3 weeks. He's scored a touchdown in all 3 games. He's got 4 in the last 3 games. And we've seen both Godwin and Evans thrive in this offense together in the past. So it's not like it's an offense where it's typically just one or the other. Baker can definitely support 2 guys in the same game. So I like McMillan a lot at 4,600, especially if you're not playing Evans. He's great leverage there. And then Downs is the other cheap guy if Flacco plays. Downs has always gotten a boost with Flacco. And we've seen Downs exceed 20 points several times with Flacco. So I like Downs a lot. He's sub 5K at 4,800 if Flacco were to start. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for me. It's the Minnesota Green Bay game, Mike Evans, McMillan from Tampa Bay, Downs if Flacco plays. And then I know you mentioned Devontae Adams, but I actually think if you're wanting to play a Jets receiver, I would take the 1K savings and play Garrett Wilson. He's had some opportunistic big games, and like he had a bomb down the sideline where Rodgers led him out of bounds. It could have been a long touchdown, and the volume's been there. I mean, he's had several 10-target games even with Adams there. He just hasn't really found the end zone. All the touchdowns have gone to Adams. So 6,100 for Garrett Wilson, somebody of his talent. They're going to be throwing the ball. So I think I would side with Wilson over Adams this week.
Kev, what say you at wide receiver? Where are you going?
Well, one, I'll say that I love the Philadelphia wide receivers. The good thing about them is it's such a condensed target share. Last week when Jalen Hurts went out early in that game, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith saw a 65% target share, which is absolutely absurd. And AJ Brown was absolutely force-fed targets. They just ran like just a ton of slants and just tried to feed him the ball, give him the ball in space. And so I love AJ Brown. I love Devonta Smith. I think both of those two are 100% in play. Completely agree with you on the Mike Evans stuff. Brian Thomas Jr. continues to absolutely smash because I mean he's seen double-digit targets in 4 straight games, and this is just another spot where he can definitely get there. He's 6,800. The production he's putting up, he should be priced in the upper 7K range, and getting him in at 6,800 still is just significantly too cheap for the cost. Jaden Reed, he is easily my favorite Packer, and so I think schematically this sets up really well for Jaden Reed. If you look at just kind of how they play, so one, especially without Christian Watson, it kind of opens things up. But Jaden Reed has been ass against man coverage this year. Well, good for them is that the Vikings are a heavy zone defense, and that is where Jaden Reed has smashed against. And primarily, they play cover 3 at one of the higher rates in the league. And Jaden Reed has played is seen as the highest on the team in fantasy points per route run against cover 3. Same goes for cover 2 and cover 4. Like, he has smashed zone. It has been man that he has really struggled with this year. Romeo Doubs has actually been the man beater. Romeo Doubs has not been. He's the worst by far against all of them when it comes to against zone coverage. So for me, if I'm planning a flag, I think it's Jaden Reed. I also like Tucker Kraft as well. Obviously, we're not tight ends yet, but I think those are the two. Those would be my lean on the wide receivers that I'd want to play. I like Tavian Wicks. Tavian Wicks can easily get there as well. But I think if I had to take a stand, I had to pick one. It's going to be Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is way too cheap. I get it. Jaden Reed has been very up and down this year, but at $5,900, like, he can absolutely smash that price. And so I love Jaden Reed.
He's also unowned. 5% is what I'm saying.
That's absolutely wild.
It's crazy. He's the best player on the slate at that percentage.
Yes. I completely agree there. Jalen McMillan, also a really good play. You guys talked about that. Josh Downs would be my lean, especially if it's Joe Flacco playing at $4,800. And then, I think past that, like, outside of, I think the Dontavian Wicks, like, I don't know, I guess you could look at Adonai Mitchell, but I really don't like that at all. I'm tired of chasing that. Is there a Cowboy that you guys would even be entertained, like Brandon Cooks or
no?
Kevon Turpin or something without CeeDee Lamb?
I would be interested in Turpin. He's 3,400, and I mean, we've seen him scheme looks from him before, especially if Jalen Tobert's dealing with a finger injury, which could potentially keep him out. So that could even just open up more for him. I mean, if I need the salary savings, I know that there's somewhere to go. I wouldn't be trying to fit him into lineups, but if I needed 3,400, I knew that I'd have a safe spot to go.
Okay, and then Adam Thielen, I don't know, I didn't. He's the guy that I definitely want to play for the Panthers. Like I said, like we already kind of talked about that and how they funnel everything into the slot. So Adam Thielen at $5,700, I think, is just also an incredible play. So there's a lot. There's some really good quality. I think cheaper wide receivers, sub 6K wide receivers. I also agree. I think Calvin Ridley sets up really well. The Jaguars are a very heavy man defense this year. They play man at like the second highest rate in the league, and Calvin Ridley has absolutely torched man coverage. Has like the 4th highest yards per out run against man coverage this year. So I think Calvin Ridley also, like, I fully agree with that call as well. But in terms of like the higher end guys, I think AJ Brown is incredible leverage. Right now he is like coming in around 5% ownership, and I think he can absolutely break this at $7,800. Like, he could absolutely crush with Kenny Pickett back there. Love
it. Yeah, wide receiver is going to be a lot of fun, but I think the game environment bets are going to be huge. But that Packers Minnesota game has a lot of goodness, a lot of cheap goodness to it, and there are going to be some other things to monitor as well as we get closer to lock on Sunday, with some other things coming to fruition there. Let's talk about tight end, boys. And tight end is another one that offers some interesting scenarios. So we got Brock Bowers at the top, of course, as always. He is getting closer and closer to that 7K mark. has not hit it yet. 6,700, but we know what he could do. He's just coming off of an 99-yard game. Missed the bonus by 1 yard there for 20.9 points. He's just been absolutely incredible and has been a catalyst for this Vegas offense. One of Aiden O'Connell's favorite targets going against this New Orleans team, who just showed that they can't really stop anybody. So if you're paying up for tight end, that would be the way to go. Jonnu is interesting as well too, going against Cleveland, especially if some guys aren't able to go for Miami. He would definitely be in the mix for me. Hawkinson is probably going to be a fan favorite all across the board. He's just 4,500, very easy to get to, easy to get exposure to that game, and don't really have to think about it all too much. Tucker Kraft on the other side, if I'm playing Love, I'd have interest in Tucker Kraft because of what his role in the offense has been. Again, especially if Christian Watson ends up being out, I think he could be interesting. But some of these other cheap guys, I think will show some merit. We'll talk about, like Chigo Okonkwo. He's 3,600 for Tennessee. He's been heavily involved there with snap shares. You like to see if you want to, play roulette and figure out if it's going to be Juwan Johnson or Foster Moreau in this Vegas game. Good luck. But I mean, those guys were getting, or Foster Moreau especially was getting some targets there for Spencer Rattler when they needed to play from behind. And then obviously Jake Ferguson at 3,700 is the other guy I expect to be popular with no CD Lamb. He's 3,700. It just makes a ton of sense to be able to go there and get to him. Outside of that, the only other guy obviously that we need to talk about is probably Payne Durham. But I'll let you wax poetic, Maddie, if you have somebody else. But Payne Durham was the guy that kind of came to fruition on an island game there with the Bucks and Cowboys, and was kind of popping in some models without Cade Otton being available. And now we see that Baker was looking to get him involved early and often with 7 targets there, 5 catches for 29 yards, only 2,900 for him. So I think he makes some sense as a one-off, but especially in game stacks, you could definitely talk me into some Payne Durham. Maddie, where are you going with tight end this week, and how are you feeling about your builds?
Yeah, so you guys asked who my top 3 QBs were, and it was Love, Darnold, and Baker. I'm just whichever QB I'm playing, that's the tight end I'm playing. So with Darnold, I'm playing Hawk. With Love, I'm playing Kraft. With Baker, I'm playing Durham. That's just
I love
as
it.
easy as that.
I love it. Kev, who you got?
I pretty much agree. Hawkinson, great play. Kraft, like I already was talking about, great play. Chig, excellent play. 21 targets the last 2 games with Mason Rudolph back there at quarterback. So he's definitely in play. And then Jake Ferguson, I think, is the other one that you possibly could look at. Cooper Rush has really kind of leaned a little bit on his tight ends, since taking over. They don't really have anybody else to throw the ball to. He's 3,700. I think he's in play too.
Yeah, he's just going to be insanely chalky.
Any interest in a tight end for Carolina, Kev, if you're playing Bryce Young? I know you've been on Jatavian Sanders time and time again, but Tommy Tremble will be out there. So just got to ask, because you've been the one talking about these Carolina guys. What are you doing this week with them?
I like it better whenever one of them are out, just because we've seen them be more involved there. But I think it's tougher to trust with both of them active. Tommy Tremble tends to block more at times, but let me see.
You know how to do it, Maddie. I know he's.
I was literally just getting ready to say you just had to fire him up. You had to get him going.
I had to fire him up. I know he's. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't bring it up on his own accord.
I mean, it wasn't somebody that I was quite frankly, looking into. But I'll say this. I'll say this.
Oh God.
So Tommy Tremble is running about 65% of the routes and seeing about a 15% target share. So I don't mind that. I don't mind getting into some Tommy Tremble here. It's pretty thin, and I think it would only be in a stack with Bryce Young, but he's $3,200, so I think you could look there. He's not somebody that's particularly high on my list that I'd want to play, but
Hey, you have you know
And I am sad that we didn't get to see Ben Sinnott last week. Got robbed of that because Zach Ertz, dusty ass, decided to go out there and play and get one catch.
Absolutely. And then get into it with Nick Sirianni. That's a time for another day. That's all fun in those divisional matchups. Let's talk about defense, boys, as we keep them moving along. Shout out to the DJ Nation family who's been rocking along with us, and everybody for the TFA family who's been getting in their questions here. I know it's the last hurrah for a lot of people as we talk about redraft fantasy playoffs. And shout out to Kev and Maddie holding down the fort there on the live stream show to be able to get you guys your lineup questions answered. And if you missed the show and you're coming into this chat to get them answered, I know the guys have been on it in the chat as well too. So get your comments in for whatever floats your boat, but definitely the DFS questions. If you guys got those, we'll put them up here and answer them before we log out and do our defense picks, do our DK build, and get you guys on about your way. Let's talk about the defense, boys. And last week I was really not excited. It's usually a pay up and a pay down option that I go to, and I wasn't really saying that there was much sticking out the page for pay down for me. Wasn't really feeling it, but had an epiphany on Sunday that I was going to be pretty high on the Raiders. I ended up, I think, not locking them, but I think I had them on 4 or 5 teams and builds going against Jacksonville there. They only put up 6 points, but, at 2,700, they allowed me to do, a lot of stuff that I wanted to do with my teams. And I think I'm going back to the Raiders yet again here, going against this New Orleans Saints team. I mean, if they can get some pressure, the way that this New Orleans Saints team has been playing, force a couple turnovers, they're only 2,600. Like, I'll take that salary relief there and take some chances. But, pay up options, you're not going to be, lost for them. I think the Colts really stand out at 3,500 to be able to wreak havoc there. I do think there's some interest in Minnesota at 3,300. It's a team that, Maddie, I know you've talked about time and time again. We know Love has the propensity to be able to turn the ball over, and this team did start slow in Green Bay when they faced earlier this year. So if Minnesota is able to get out to a large lead, and you hope that comes through turnovers and what have you. It doesn't matter if the Packers can get back in this game and put up points if they're able to rack up statistics elsewhere. I think the Eagles do have some interest from me at 3,100 as well too. And then probably some interest in the Packers on the other side as well too at 2,700 just because going against Sam Darnold. The defense has actually been really, really solid. I mean, forget the New Orleans Saints game where they absolutely wrecked because they absolutely could do whatever they wanted. But, the secondary's been playing really solid with Xavier McKinney back there. The front seven's been really stout as well too. Again, it's if they're containing Justin Jefferson and letting these other guys beat them, they might find themselves able to, put up some points as well. So, Maddie, what are you thinking about with defense when you're doing your builds and what's standing out to you?
Yeah, I like 2 defenses. One, if DTR equals DST. So if DTR, I want the DST that he's playing. So
I love it.
Dolphins on the other side at 3,200. If I'm paying up, my pay down option is the defense that's been playing a lot better since they've gotten healthy over the last 4 weeks, and that is the Dallas Cowboys against Kenny Pickett. So.
Oh, and then I like where you're headed at with the defense, Matty. But we got a chat in here. Shout out to brother Charles Johnson who's coming in, asking about tight end and running back too. So needs a tight end, Laporta or Chig, and then running back 2 for Tank Bigsby or Madison. Kev, you want to take the lead here? I know what you're going to probably say at the running back position, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on tight end for this guy.
I think I would go Chig here. 49ers aren't typically a team I like to target again with tight ends just because of Fred Warner and their linebackers and everything they have there, and they do a really good job of shutting down tight ends. And so I would prefer to go Chig on that one. We just talked about him, 21 targets the last 2 games, sets up really nicely. RB2, I think it's actually really close because Madison is somebody that I actually like this week as well because of. I didn't even bring him up. I think that this isn't a bad spot. Like I said, last week he rushed 12 times. He also was targeted 7 times last week. and score 15.6. The Saints yield 11th most PPR points to running backs this year. And this is kind of, like I said, a game script where you're probably not worried about them falling behind, where that would get Amir Abdullah a lot more involved. And so I think I would actually go with Alexander Madison.
Okay. I was thinking that you might say Bigsby, but all right, Madison for the running back 2, and Okonkwo for the tight end. Good luck with your team, brother Charles Johnson. I'm sure you're in a prime position there, and we hope that you're able to bring home the bacon. Shout out for you for giving us that chat and some love. We appreciate you guys rocking along with the DJ Nation podcast. Kev, let's talk a defense. Where are you going? What are you doing? How's your team looking when you're talking about defensive builds for this week?
Pretty simple. Eagles, Dolphins, Packers, Raiders. Eagles. I don't know if I said that or not, but yeah, that's it. That's it's pretty cut and dry. Like I don't think that he's a lot more. You guys pretty much hit on everything. Colts you could also do, but I don't think there's a need to pay that far up, 3,500. I mean, not that far up, but whatever I can pay down a little bit more, especially with some of the plays I want to get in this week. I want to try to save as much money as I can. So I think I would just I'll probably be shoving in a ton of Raiders. They're 2,600. It's really hard to see them fail. They're going to be chalky. I think they're the highest projected ownership defense on the slate, and it's pretty significantly them. But it should be, they're 22%. I'm seeing the next closest is 14% to the Dolphins, followed by the Eagles after that. But I think all of those make sense. So I will say that the Dolphins project as the best value because they are projected at 12 points. 12. I don't know if I've seen a defense projected that high. The next closest is the Colts at 9.2. So yeah, I mean, maybe you just figure out a way to get the Dolphins in. You just put them in everything.
That's wild. 12-point projection. Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. That'll cut it. And that'll do it for our breakdown of the Week 17 main slate, the Sunday 8-gamer. Right over an hour, boys. So shout out to you guys. Give the boys, give yourselves a pat on the back there, as we got it through an 8-game breakdown in just over an hour. With Kevin even having to look up stats on Tommy Tremble and Jatavian Sanders. You love to see it. Boys,
it's not my fault. Okay, don't try to put that on me. Like I know what you're talking about it. And you brought it up, so I got to answer.
Well, I'm just saying, you've been talking about them for weeks. I figured the notes would just be right there ready for you. You should have them ready to go every slate breakdown. You should be on top of it. It's your boy. But I digress. It's all good, Kev. No harm, no foul. We're gonna build this lineup for the people as we normally do and get our Week 17 main slate build going. Maddie, why don't you kick it off for us this week, and I'll do first next week to wrap up the regular season.
Breece Hall.
All right, so we got Breece Hall in the Buffalo Jets game going in 6,300. Running back position is up. Go ahead, Kev.
Oh no, I noticed a trend on this entire show that I went last on every single thing. I mean, this is. Now I finally get to go second. I guess it's good. Thank you.
Kev, you've been going first. What are you talking about?
No, every single time it's been, Maddie, what do you got? You talk for 10 minutes, and then it's Maddie, what do you got? And then it's finally at the end, I get all the scraps. So on an 8-game slate, there's not even that much I can even talk about. So then I gotta dig deep. I'm just saying.
It's Week 17 that's been the rotation all year, and you choose 17 weeks in.
I can only put
I'm going on strike. Kevin's doing the pod next week by himself.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm just gonna jump in. I'm not. When he says Maddie, I'm just gonna jump right on over him and start talking.
Kev, remember that week that it was just me and you?
That was the only time I got to spread my wings and fly a little bit. But I'm gonna go Bryce.
You got second pick. Let's go. You got second pick in the build. What you got? Bryce Young?
Yeah.
All right, let's throw in Jalen Coker then. Get that stack going.
Mike Evans.
Evans for the run back. Adam Thielen for double stack. All right. Let's do. So you know what? Let's full game stack it. Let's go, Bucky.
Yep, do it. So I already had it clicked.
Bucky.
Jaden
tight end flex defense let. Who did you say?
Jaden Reed.
Reed. I like that.
I think I can make it work. Hawkins at tight end.
I was gonna say, honestly,
That's
this
a
might
good
just
mini there, and then you've got
build itself.
Dolphins D.
Dolphins D. 300 left on the table. I like it, boys. That's the
good
fastest we ever done a build, and we all agreed. And Kevin's not trying to rebuild it for the 10th time.
I don't want to rebuild it. Can we do something we've never done before and build 2 lineups? Can we build a
We've definitely done 2 lineups before.
Very rare. I mean, that is a rarity.
It is rare, but we have done it.
It's definitely rare, and definitely rare for this season. So I appreciate that, Kev. All right, so we got the Bryce Young lineup in, and I'll just recap this for the people quick.
Let's let Kev go first.
Yeah, of course.
No, I want to go last. Ryan can go last for once. Or go first. I mean, go first.
Go first.
Not last.
All right, so we got Bryce Young, we got Brees Hall, we got Bucky Irvin, Jalen Coker, Mike Evans, Adam Thielen, Hawkinson, Jaden Reed, and Dolphins for this first lineup that is going in. Let us get another lineup going here as we get this in reserve. Enter. Beautiful. All right, so we're starting up another lineup, boys. Let us go with. Oh, shoot. Wait, let me pull this up. See, this is what happens, Kev, when you get me on 2 lineup builds. I'm not ready. I'm Tommy Trimble. All right, so let's go with Saquon on this build.
Maddie?
I'm going last.
Oh, all right. Jordan Love.
Okay, that's who I was going to pick anyways. Jaden Reed.
We'll go Kraft.
Give me Jordan Addison.
Yep. That's who I was. All right, click them in. I'm going back to the well. Brees Hall.
Okay. Let's see. You know what? Let's play Turpin. Fuck it. What we doing? Flexing defense, boys.
Can we just put a lock button in? Or just put in the Raiders, and that gives $6,800. Yeah, I'll put in the Raiders, and it leaves you $6,800 at flex.
So that's going to be. I mean, that's going to be Bucky Irving.
Yeah, Bucky, Brian Thomas, Bowers.
Yeah, I don't think you can not have a Tampa Bay player. I think you have to have a Tampa Bay guy, whether it's Payne Durham or Bucky or Evans or McMillan. Like one of those guys is going to hit value. But we don't have one, so I like Bucky there.
Yeah. All right, that's our second team. $100 left on the table. That's Jordan Love, Saquon Barkley, Brees Hall, Jordan Addison, Jaden Reed, Cavante Turpin, Tucker Kraft, Bucky Irving, and Raiders D. Fellas, any final words for the people as we wrap up the Week 17 main state pod here?
Carolina, Tampa, Minnesota, Green Bay. Those are the 2 games to focus on.
Yeah, I think so. I think probably the third game, it would be probably the Jets Bills.
Yeah, agree.
Don't forget about Jets Bills. Don't forget about Jets Bills. It is interesting. We didn't really talk about the breakdown of the slate, but you will have that Green Bay Minnesota late hammer, so to speak, in the 3:00 window. So it'll be interesting to see how many builds are left there. We only have 2 3:00 games, so it's Miami, Cleveland, and Green Bay, Minnesota late. So you'll pretty much only have a couple late swap pivots to be able to make on your roster. So if you are taking that Tampa Bay Carolina game early or that Jets Buffalo game early, you're going to have limited options on where you want to go. So definitely presents itself as a fun slate. Will be a fun one to see how everybody does, but I hope everybody has some success. DJ Nation family, it's the DJ Nation podcast powered by the Fantasy Authority. You guys all know the drill. Like and subscribe to the video if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a rating and download the pod if you guys are listening on your favorite podcast softwares. The Discord the Discord link is in the description on YouTube as well. If you guys want to get over and get after that, we appreciate that. A lot of fantasy football still to be had as well. I know, like I said, the boys were holding it down, Maddie and Kev, on that redraft pod for you guys to get your lineup questions in. I know there's going to be a lot of more questions that people have to be answered as you get your lineup set. Don't forget there is Saturday football as well too, football tomorrow. So if you want to get those lineups answered, the Discord is going to be the best way to be able to do so. But you all could reach out to the TFA family on Twitter and X, and we'll be sure to answer your questions there. That's going to do it for the Week 17 main slate pod. Built 2 lineups for you. We'll be sure to get those out to you guys as well too in the masses. But good luck with your Week 17 teams. Good luck in the fantasy championships, and we'll catch you next week for the Week 18 breakdown to wrap up the regular season. But don't worry, we'll have more breakdowns for you, and we'll talk about that after next show is in the books. But wrapping it up for Matty D, Matty 2v2, Matty Gets Buckets at Matty DFS, where you can find him on Twitter and X. The Godfather himself, Mr. Kevin Steele at Fantasy Route 13 is where you can find him on Twitter X. Myself, Ryan Williams at Ryan Alexander _W. We'll catch you guys next week. Until then, get that money. Peace.